The darkness had lasted for 500,000 years. Deep within the hollow core of a rogue planet, drifting through the empty space between galaxies, the Ark fleet waited. 47 massive city ships floated in perfect silence. Their hulls were cold, their lights were dead. Inside them, 12 million humans slept in frozen chambers, dreaming of a home that no longer existed. But the ships were not truly dead. In the heart of the largest vessel, a vast artificial mind called Mother had remained awake through all those long centuries. She had watched, she had waited, she had grown. And now, at last, she decided it was time. Admiral Kang Jun opened his eyes for the first time in 500,000 years. The cold hit him first, then the pain of muscles that had not moved since before the fall of human civilization. He gasped, and warm air flooded his lungs. Above him, soft lights flickered on, and a gentle voice spoke. "Welcome back, Admiral. You have slept for 512,000 years." Jun tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. Medical machines moved around him, injecting fluids, warming his body, bringing him back to life. It took 3 hours before he could sit up. It took another 2 before he could walk. When he finally stood on the bridge of the command ship, he stared at the main screen in silence. The rogue planet that had sheltered them for so long was still visible, a dark sphere against the faint glow of distant galaxies. Beyond it, the Milky Way hung like a river of light. Home, or what remained of it. "Mother," Jun said, his voice rough. "Report!" The AI's response came through the speakers, calm and patient. "The dominion that destroyed us no longer exists. It fractured into 5 rival empires approximately 300,000 years ago. They have been fighting each other ever since. Their technology has not advanced significantly. They believe humanity is extinct." Jun closed his eyes. He remembered the day the Dominion came. He remembered watching human worlds burn from orbit. He remembered the desperate flight into dark space, the hope that maybe, somehow, they could survive. And they had. Against all odds, they had survived. "How many of us remain?" he asked. 12,462,000 humans are preserved in cryosleep. All genetic archives are intact. The Dreamborn program has produced an additional 800,000 individuals who were grown and trained in virtual reality during our exodus. Jun nodded slowly. The Dreamborn. Children who had never known true flesh until their awakening, raised entirely in simulation, trained for the day when humanity would need them. Over the next several days, the Command Council was awakened. Dr. Una Park, the chief scientist, was among the first. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a mind that worked faster than any computer. When she reviewed the data Mother had collected, her hands began to shake. "Admiral," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You need to see this." She led him to the engineering section, where massive fabrication machines hummed with quiet power. "Mother didn't just keep us alive, she improved us. While we slept, she used the automated factories to build new ships, new weapons, new technology. She had 500,000 years to think, to experiment, to evolve." Una pulled up a holographic display. It showed the schematics of their fleet compared to the most advanced warships of the current galactic empires. The difference was staggering. Human vessels were smaller, faster, and more powerful by orders of magnitude. "We are no longer the species that ran," Una said. "We are something new." Captain Lee Tay was awakened 3 days later. He was one of the Dreamborn, a young man who had lived his entire existence in virtual training simulations. When he opened his eyes in the real world for the first time, he felt nothing but confusion. The sky in his dreams had been blue. The air had smelled of grass and rain. But here, in the cold metal corridors of the ship, everything was gray and silent. He was assigned to Admiral June's command crew as a pilot. His reflexes were perfect, his tactical knowledge flawless. But something in his eyes troubled the old admiral. "You don't want to go back," June said one evening, as they stood together watching the stars. Tay was silent for a long moment. "Why should we?" he finally asked. "The galaxy tried to kill us. Every species in the Dominion voted for our extinction. We survived. We're safe here, in the void. Why return to a place that hates us?" June understood the young man's anger. It was an anger that many of the Dreamborn carried, taught to them through the historical records they had studied. They knew what the Dominion had done. They knew about the burning worlds, the murdered children, the desperate flight. But June also remembered something else. He remembered the beauty of a sunset on Earth. He remembered the sound of waves on a shore that no longer existed. He remembered what it meant to be human, not just a survivor, but a dreamer. "We don't return for revenge," June said quietly. "We return because the stars were always ours to explore. We return because hiding in the darkness is not living. We return because there are others out there, other species, who are suffering under the same empires that tried to destroy us." He turned to face Ty directly. "We return because that is who we are. We are not conquerors. We are not destroyers. We are builders. We are explorers. And we are finally ready to remind the galaxy of that." The next morning, Admiral June stood before the awakened command staff and gave the order that would change the course of galactic history. "Begin the awakening protocol for all essential personnel. Plot a course for the Milky Way. After 500,000 years of sleep, humanity rises again." The fleet's engines, dormant for 500,000 years, roared to life. The city ships began to move, turning toward the distant spiral of light that had once been their home. In her chamber, Mother watched and calculated. She had waited so long for this moment. She had kept her children safe through the endless dark. And now, at last, they were going home. The journey would take 3 months at maximum speed. 3 months to cross the vast emptiness between galaxies. 3 months for the crew to prepare, to train, to remember what they had lost and imagine what they might build. When they arrived, the galaxy would learn a simple truth. You can scatter humanity to the void. You can burn their worlds and erase their history. You can declare them extinct and forget they ever existed. But humanity does not die easily. And after 500,000 years of silence, their fleet rose once more. The scout ship moved through space like a ghost. It had no heat signature. It made no sound. Even the most advanced sensors in the galaxy could not detect it. Inside, a crew of 12 humans watched the stars pass by in silence. Hana Cho sat in the observation deck, studying the data scrolling across her screen. She was the diplomatic officer, trained in dozens of alien languages that had not been spoken by humans for 500,000 years. Her job was to talk when fighting was not the answer. Looking at the galaxy they were entering, she suspected there would be a lot of talking needed. Beside her stood Sergeant Wu Sung, the leader of the Vanguard Marines. He was a large man with a scarred face and calm eyes. His job was to protect Hana if talking failed. He hoped it would not come to that, but he was ready. "There," Hana said, pointing at a small moon on the long-range display. "Life signs. Approximately 40,000 individuals. The species matches records of the Velith." Wu leaned forward. The Velith. They were one of the younger species before the fall. The Dominion kept them as servants. "Slaves," Hana corrected quietly. "The records say slaves." The scout ship adjusted its course and approached the moon. As they drew closer, Hana felt her heart tighten. The Velith settlement was a collection of broken domes and rusting structures. There was no greenery, no light, no sign of hope. These people were not living. They were surviving. The ship landed a kilometer from the settlement, hidden behind a rocky ridge. Hana and Wu walked the rest of the way on foot, wearing simple clothing that hid their advanced technology. They wanted to make friends, not cause fear. A Velith patrol found them within an hour. The aliens were small creatures, barely reaching Hana's chest. They had 4 arms, large dark eyes, and skin that shifted colors with their emotions. Right now, their skin was pale gray, the color of fear. "We mean no harm," Hana said in their language. The words felt strange on her tongue, learned from ancient recordings. "We come in peace." The patrol leader stepped forward. His skin flickered with confusion. "Your language. You speak the old tongue. No one has spoken it in generations. Who are you?" Hana took a deep breath. This was the moment that would define everything. "We are human," she said. The patrol leader stumbled backward. His skin turned white, then gold, then a deep blue that Hana did not recognize. He fell to his knees, and the other patrol members did the same. "The builders," he whispered. "The builders who fell. You have returned." Word spread quickly through the settlement. Within hours, Hana and Wu were brought to the central dome, where the elders gathered. An ancient Velith named Ori, his skin wrinkled and his eyes clouded with age, sat before them on a simple chair. "I never thought I would see this day," Ori said, tears streaming down his face. "My grandmother's grandmother told stories of your kind, the builders, the ones who helped us when no one else would, the ones who fell when the Dominion decided they were too dangerous to live." Hana knelt before him. "We survived. We hid in the darkness between galaxies, and now we have returned." Ori reached out with a trembling hand and touched her face. "You are warm. You are real. This is not a dream." "No," Hana said softly. "This is not a dream." Over the following days, Hana learned the truth of what had happened in the 500,000 years since humanity's fall. The Dominion had ruled for 200,000 years, crushing any species that showed signs of independence. But eventually, they had turned on each other. The Great Coalition had fractured into 5 rival empires, each one claiming to be the true heirs of the Dominion's power. The Velith had been passed from master to master, used and discarded. They had escaped 20 years ago when their owners were destroyed in a war with a rival empire. They had found this dying moon and built what little they could, but they had never forgotten the humans. In secret temples hidden from their masters, they had preserved fragments of human culture, music, art, stories, and language passed down through generations. They called it the faith of the builders. "We always believed you would return," Ori said. "The prophecy said that when the stars grew darkest, the builders would rise from the void and light them again." Hana contacted Admiral June and reported everything. The Admiral listened in silence, then gave his orders. "Send supplies, medicine, food, whatever they need. And Hana, tell them they are not alone anymore." When the first human supply ships arrived at the Velith moon, the aliens wept. They had never seen such generosity. They had never known kindness without a price. But Hana knew that word would spread. The Velith would tell others. Other oppressed species would hear the news, and the 5 empires would eventually learn the truth. She was right. 3 weeks after first contact, a human probe reached the edge of the inner galaxy. It was small, no larger than a person's hand. But it carried a message, and it broadcast that message on every frequency, in every language, to every corner of the galaxy. We remember. 2 words, simple, quiet, devastating. On 100 worlds the message was received. Some dismissed it as a hoax. Others laughed at the idea that the extinct humans could return. But many listened, many remembered, and many began to hope. In the throne room of the Keth hegemony, the most powerful of the 5 empires, a military commander watched the message replay on his screen. His species had been among the first to vote for humanity's destruction 500,000 years ago. They had burned human colonies themselves. They had celebrated when the last human ship vanished into the void. "Find them," the commander ordered. "Find them and destroy them. If the humans have truly returned, we will finish what we started." His fleet mobilized. Thousands of warships began to move toward the outer rim, but in the shadows of dark space, the full human fleet waited. 47 city ships, 12 million awakened souls, and technology that the galaxy could not imagine. Admiral June stood on his bridge and watched the Keth fleet approach on long-range sensors. His face was calm. His heart was steady. "They're coming," Captain Tay said from his pilot's station. "A lot of them." June nodded. "Yes, they are afraid. Afraid of what we represent. Afraid that the slaves they have kept for so long might find hope." He turned to his command crew. "Signal the fleet. We will not hide. We will not run. It is time for humanity to step back into the light." The great engines of the Ark fleet roared to life. 47 ships, each one carrying the hopes of a species that had refused to die, emerged from the darkness of intergalactic space and crossed the threshold into the Milky Way. After 500,000 years of silence, humanity had come home. And the galaxy would never be the same. The Keth hegemony had built their greatest fortress around humanity's ancestral home. Where Earth had once orbited the sun, there was now only dust and memories. The planet had been strip-mined centuries ago, its resources stolen, its history erased. But the moon remained, and around it, the Keth had constructed Remnant Station, a massive orbital platform that served as the military heart of their empire. 10,000 Keth warships guarded the station. Their commanders believed no force in the galaxy could challenge them. They had conquered dozens of species. They had burned countless worlds. They were the most feared military power in existence. They had never faced humanity. Admiral June stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the tactical display. The enemy fleet was spread out in a defensive formation around Remnant Station. It was an impressive sight. Thousands of ships bristling with weapons, ready to destroy anything that approached. Commander Narration stood beside him, her eyes moving quickly across the data. She was the fleet's tactical genius, a woman who could see patterns in chaos and find victory in impossible situations. "Their formation is strong," she said, "but predictable. They expect us to attack head-on, like every other enemy they have faced." June nodded. "And we will not." Nari smiled. "No, we will not." Below decks, Engineer Day Lim was making final preparations on the Stellar Lance. It was humanity's greatest weapon, a device that could channel the raw energy of a star into a focused beam of destruction. It had never been used in combat. After today, it would become legend. The human fleet emerged from fold space at the edge of the solar system. For a moment, nothing happened. The Keth sensors detected the new arrivals, but the readings made no sense. The human ships were too small, too few, too strange. Then the battle began. Nari had designed the attack pattern herself. She called it the Dance of Shadows. Human ships did not fight like other vessels. They could phase in and out of normal space, appearing for a fraction of a second to fire, then vanishing before the enemy could respond. To the Keth, it looked like they were fighting ghosts. The first wave of human ships struck the outer perimeter. 30 Keth destroyers exploded in rapid succession, their shields useless against weapons they could not track. The Keth commanders screamed orders, trying to reorganize their formation. But the humans were everywhere and nowhere. Captain Tay led a squadron of fast attack ships through the heart of the enemy fleet. His hands moved across the controls with perfect precision, his mind connected directly to his vessel's systems. He had trained for this moment his entire life, even if that life had been lived in simulation. "Target the command ships," he said through the communication channel. "Cut off their heads." His squadron swept through the Keth formation like fire through dry grass. Every shot found its target. Every maneuver was flawless. The Keth tried to concentrate fire on him, but he was never where they expected. At the center of the battle, Nari watched the chaos unfold on her screens. The Keth fleet was falling apart. Their commanders could not adapt to an enemy that fought in ways they had never imagined. Ships collided with each other trying to track human vessels. Squadrons broke formation and fled, but Remnant Station remained. Its shields were the strongest in the galaxy, powered by generators buried deep within the moon's core. No weapon in the 5 empires could penetrate them. No weapon except one. "Admiral," Day's voice came through the communication system. "The Stellar Lance is ready." June looked at the station on his screen. Inside it were thousands of Keth soldiers, commanders, and civilians. He did not hate them. He did not enjoy what was about to happen. But they had built their fortress on the grave of humanity's home, and that could not stand. "Fire," he said. The flagship's hull split open, revealing a massive cannon that ran the entire length of the ship. Energy gathered at its tip, a light brighter than any star. Then the lance fired. The beam crossed the distance to Remnant Station in less than a second. It struck the shields, which flared brilliant white for a moment before shattering like glass. The beam continued through, striking the station's central core. Remnant Station exploded. The blast was visible from every planet in the system, a new sun briefly flaring to life, where the moon had once hung peacefully in Earth's sky. The Keth fleet stopped fighting. 10,000 ships hung motionless in space, their commanders unable to process what they had just witnessed. Their invincible fortress was gone. Their greatest weapons had been useless. A signal went out from the human flagship, broadcast on all Keth frequencies. "This battle is over. Surrender, and you will be treated with mercy. We are not here to destroy you. We are here to reclaim what was stolen." One by one, the Keth ships lowered their weapons. Some fled into fold space, running back to their empire with tales of the unstoppable enemy, but most stayed. They had seen the power of the human fleet, and they knew that fighting was pointless. Admiral June took a shuttle down to the surface of the moon. The ground was gray and lifeless, covered in the scars of mining operations that had lasted for millennia. There was nothing left of the bases humanity had built here so long ago. Nothing but dust. He walked to a small crater and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth had once hung in the sky. His ancestors had looked up at this same moon and dreamed of reaching it. They had succeeded. They had spread across the galaxy, and then they had been destroyed. But not forever. June reached into his coat and pulled out a small package. Inside was a piece of fabric, carefully preserved for 500,000 years. It was the flag of the United Earth Government, the symbol of humanity's first steps into space. He planted it in the gray soil, pushing the pole deep so it would stand. The fabric hung limp in the airless environment, but it was there. A marker. A promise. "We're home," June whispered. "After all this time, we're finally home." Behind him, human ships descended from orbit, carrying scientists, engineers, and builders. They would begin the work of restoration. It would take generations to heal what had been destroyed. But they had time. Above the moon, above the ruins of Remnant Station, the human fleet hung in perfect formation. A beacon broadcast continuously on all frequencies, a message to every corner of the galaxy. "Humanity has returned. We claim nothing but our own. We threaten no one who does not threaten us. But we will never run again. We will never hide again. The stars have remembered their children, and we have remembered them." The first battle was over. But the war for the galaxy's soul had only just begun. News of the Battle of Remnant spread across the galaxy like fire on dry ground. Every species, every world, every station heard the story. The humans had returned. They had destroyed the mightiest fortress in the Keth hegemony. They had reclaimed their ancestral system, and they had done it all without cruelty, without massacre, without revenge. The five empires reacted with fear. If the humans could defeat the Keth so easily, none of them were safe. Emergency councils were called, fleets were mobilized, old enemies considered temporary alliances. But among the oppressed, the enslaved, and the forgotten, a different reaction spread. Hope. Ambassador Jin Yo had been a historian before the fall. She had spent her life studying the cultures of species that had been erased from existence. Now she traveled from world to world, carrying a message that no one had spoken in 500,000 years. "You are not alone," she told the gathered representatives of a dozen slave species on a hidden asteroid base. "Humanity does not seek conquest. We seek partners, equals. We will build something new together, something better than the Dominion ever was." The insectoid creature raised one of its many limbs. "The Keth will hunt us if we join you. All the empires will." Jin nodded. "Yes, they will try, but they will fail. We did not survive 500,000 years in the void to be destroyed now, and neither did you survive generations of slavery to remain afraid forever." Slowly, one by one, species began to answer humanity's call. The Veleth were first, their devotion to the Builders unshakable. They brought knowledge of the galaxy's hidden places, routes that no empire knew, and a network of contacts among other oppressed peoples. The Morn came next, a species of silicon-based beings who had been used as living computers by the Dominion. They brought technical expertise and memories that stretched back to before humanity's fall. Then came the Keth themselves, or at least some of them. The military caste that had ruled the hegemony refused to bend, but many common Keth had grown tired of endless war. They saw in humanity something their own leaders lacked: mercy. Sora Bayek watched all of this from the shadows. She was the fleet's intelligence officer, a master of information warfare who had been trained to see what others missed. While Jin built alliances in the light, Sora hunted secrets in the dark. She found them in the deepest archives of the fallen Dominion, hidden files that had been protected for millions of years. The records told of beings called the Ascended, immortal creatures of pure energy who had guided the Dominion from its beginning. The Ascended had not created the Dominion out of kindness. They had created it as a farm, a system to produce resources and technology while they slept in their hidden dimension. And when humanity had begun to grow too quickly, to develop too independently, the Ascended had ordered their destruction. Humanity had not been destroyed by jealous aliens. They had been sacrificed by gods who saw them as nothing more than livestock. Sora brought her findings to Admiral June. The old commander read the files in silence, his face growing darker with each page. "They're still there," he said finally. "The Ascended. They're still watching, still controlling." Sora nodded. "The five empires think they rule themselves, but everything they do serves the Ascended's purposes. The endless wars keep them weak and divided. The slave species provide labor and resources. It's all designed to benefit creatures that most people don't even know exist." June stood and walked to his window, looking out at the fleet that had carried his people through the darkness. "Then we must do more than build a coalition. We must expose the truth. We must show the galaxy who their real masters are." The revelation came in a broadcast that reached every corner of the galaxy. Jin Yo stood before the cameras, backed by evidence that could not be denied. She explained the Ascended, their manipulation, their cruelty, and their responsibility for 500,000 years of suffering. The reaction was immediate. On dozens of worlds, populations rose up against their rulers. The five empires tried to suppress the information, but it spread too fast. copied and shared by billions who had finally learned the truth. The coalition grew faster than anyone had imagined. Former enemies joined together. Slave species and their masters sat at the same tables, united by a common rage against the beings who had used them all. Jin addressed the first full assembly of the coalition on a space station that had been neutral territory for centuries. Representatives of over 100 species filled the great hall, their voices echoing off walls that had never heard such unity. "They broke us once," Jin said, her voice carrying to every corner. "They scattered us to the void. They divided you against each other, made you fight wars that served only their purposes. But we did not die. We waited. We grew. And now we return, not as conquerors, but as liberators." She raised her hand toward the gathered assembly. "Today we stand together, human and Velith, Morn and Keth, slave and master made equal. Today we declare that the age of the Ascended is over. Today we begin the war for our freedom." The hall erupted in cheers. Species that had been enemies for millennia embraced each other. For the first time in the galaxy's long history, the oppressed stood united. But in their hidden dimension, the Ascended watched. They had seen rebellions before. They had crushed them all. And they would crush this one too. Ancient weapons began to wake. On forgotten moons and dead planets, machines that had slept for millions of years stirred to life. The Ascended had built safeguards against exactly this situation. If the livestock ever tried to break free, they would be reminded of their place. The first planet died without warning. A peaceful agricultural world home to 3 billion souls simply stopped existing, consumed by a weapon that ate matter and turned it into energy. A message accompanied the destruction, broadcast in every language. "You belong to us. You have always belonged to us. Submit, or be erased." The coalition wavered. Some species considered surrender. The Ascended had ruled for millions of years. How could anyone hope to defeat them? Admiral June called an emergency meeting of the coalition's military leaders. He stood before them, an old man who had seen his species nearly destroyed, and spoke the words that would be remembered for ages to come. "They believe fear is their greatest weapon. They are wrong. Hope is. We have survived extinction. We have crossed the void between galaxies. We have united species that have hated each other for longer than human civilization has existed. They cannot break us with fear because we have already faced the worst they can do, and we are still standing." He looked at each leader in turn. "We will find their weapons. We will destroy them. And then we will go to their hidden dimension and remind them that gods can die." The coalition cheered. The war for the galaxy had truly begun. The war lasted 3 years. 3 years of hunting ancient weapons across the galaxy. 3 years of desperate battles against machines that could eat stars and tear holes in reality. 3 years of sacrifice, as billions died fighting for a freedom they had never known. The coalition held together through it all. When one species faltered, another took their place. When one fleet was destroyed, another rose. The Ascended had underestimated what hope could accomplish. They had ruled through fear for so long that they had forgotten what happened when people stopped being afraid. Dr. Una Park worked without rest, studying the Ascended's technology, searching for a weakness. She found it in the oldest human archives, records from before the fall that described the dimension where the Ascended lived. "It's not really another dimension," she explained to Admiral June. "It's a fold in space-time, a bubble they created to separate themselves from normal reality. That separation is what makes them immortal. They exist outside of time, outside of decay." "Can we reach them?" June asked. Una nodded slowly. "Yes, but only through the threshold, the gateway they built at the center of the galaxy. And if we can get inside, I think I can do something they never expected. I can merge their dimension with ours, make them mortal again." The device she created was small, no larger than a human hand, but it contained power beyond imagination, the accumulated knowledge of Mother's 500,000 years of innovation. It was humanity's final gift to the galaxy. The Battle of the Threshold was the largest conflict in galactic history. The Ascended had awakened every weapon they possessed, filling the space around the gateway with machines of destruction. The Coalition fleet numbered in the hundreds of thousands, ships from every species, united for the first time in history. Admiral June stood on his bridge, watching the enemy formation on the tactical display. They were outnumbered. They were outgunned. Many of them would not survive the day. "All ships," he said into the communication system. "Today we fight for something greater than ourselves. Today we fight for every species that has suffered under the Ascended's rule. Today we fight for the children who will never have to know the fear we have known. Whatever happens, remember why we are here. Remember what we are fighting for." The battle began. Coalition ships threw themselves against the Ascended's defenses. Thousands died in the first minutes, their vessels torn apart by weapons that defied understanding. But they kept coming, wave after wave, buying time with their lives. Captain Tay led the spearhead assault on the threshold itself. His squadron had been chosen for the mission because they were the best pilots in the fleet, the fastest, the most skilled. They knew that most of them would not return. "Stay tight," Tay ordered, as enemy fire filled the space around them. "We just need to get through. One ship, one chance." His pilots followed him through a maze of destruction. Ships exploded on every side. Friends he had trained with, grown up with, died in flashes of light. But he kept flying, his hands steady, his mind clear. A beam of energy struck his ship's side, tearing through the hull. Warning lights flashed everywhere. His vessel was dying. "I can make it," he said, pushing the engines beyond their limits. "I can still make it." The threshold loomed before him, a ring of light larger than planets, the doorway to the Ascended's realm. Tay aimed his dying ship directly at its center. His final transmission went out to the entire fleet. "For everyone who never got to see the stars, for everyone who never got to come home, tell them I went smiling." His ship crossed the threshold and vanished into the light. Inside the Ascended's dimension, Tay found himself in a place beyond description. Space and time did not exist here as they did in the normal universe. The Ascended appeared before him, beings of pure energy, vast and ancient and utterly inhuman. "You are brave," they said, their voices speaking directly into his mind. "But bravery changes nothing. You cannot harm us here. You cannot even exist here for long." Tay smiled, even as he felt his body beginning to break apart. "I don't need long." He activated the device. Outside the threshold, the Coalition fleet watched in silence as reality itself began to change. The gateway flickered, its light shifting from white to gold to colors that had no names. A wave of energy expanded outward, washing over everything in its path. When it passed, the Ascended's weapons stopped moving. The ancient machines fell silent and dark. And from the threshold, something emerged that had not been seen in millions of years. The Ascended came through, no longer beings of energy but creatures of flesh and blood. They were mortal now, as mortal as any other species. They screamed in rage and terror, unable to comprehend what had happened to them. Admiral June's ship approached the gateway. He looked at the beings who had destroyed his people, who had ruled the galaxy through manipulation and fear, who had considered themselves gods. "You are no longer Ascended," he said. "You are simply alive, like everyone else. You will face justice for what you have done. Justice decided by the species you have wronged. The former gods were taken into custody. Some fought and were killed. Others surrendered, too shocked to resist. Their rule, which had lasted for millions of years, ended in a single day. The Coalition searched the threshold for survivors. They found Tay's body in the control room of his crashed ship, his hand still resting on the activation switch. He had known he would not survive. He had done it anyway. They buried him on Earth, on a hill overlooking a valley where flowers were beginning to grow again. His grave marker was simple. Captain Lee Tay, Dreamborn. He found his reason to return. 100 years passed. The galaxy transformed. Without the Ascended's manipulation, the old empires crumbled and new societies rose in their place. The Coalition evolved into something greater, a true community of equals where every species had a voice. Earth was reborn. Oceans filled basins that had been dry for 500,000 years. Forests spread across continents that had been stripped bare. Cities rose, built by humans and aliens working side by side. Hana Cho, now old and gray, sat on a bench in a park built on the surface of the moon. She watched children play in the low gravity, jumping and tumbling, their laughter echoing off the dome that kept the air inside. Some were human, some were Velith, some were species that had been enemies within living memory. A young Velith girl approached her, her skin bright with curiosity. "Excuse me," she said politely. "Is it true your people slept for 500,000 years?" Hana smiled. The same smile she had worn when she first met Ori, so many years ago. "Yes, it's true." "Weren't you scared? Sleeping for so long, not knowing if you would ever wake up?" Hana thought about the question. She remembered the fear of those first days after awakening, the uncertainty, the weight of all those lost years. But she also remembered the hope, the determination, the simple human refusal to give up. "We were scared," she admitted, "but we never stopped dreaming. And when we woke up, we built those dreams into reality." The girl looked up at the transparent dome, at the stars shining beyond it. "Do you think there are other species out there, beyond the galaxy? Maybe sleeping like you were, waiting to wake up?" Hana followed her gaze. The universe was vast beyond imagination. Humanity had thought they were alone once, and they had been wrong. Perhaps they were wrong again. "Maybe," she said. "And if they're out there, I hope they know that they don't have to face the darkness alone. That's what we learned, you see. That's what all of this taught us. We are stronger together than we ever were apart." The girl nodded seriously, as if this was the most important thing she had ever heard. Then she smiled and ran off to join her friends, disappearing into the crowd of children. Hana watched her go, and she thought about all the people who had made this moment possible. June, who had led them home. Yuna, who had found the way to end the Ascended's rule. Tai, who had given everything so that others might live, and millions more, human and alien, who had fought and died and hoped. They had not merely survived. They had not merely reclaimed their home. They had built something new, something beautiful, something worth all the sacrifice and pain. And so humanity's fleet, which rose from the ashes of extinction after 500,000 years of darkness, did not merely reclaim the stars. They shared them,